G'day guys, Mac with the House Circle, and today I want to talk about fixing the Dark Angels Legion. Now, I also want to do a video at some point where I discuss fixing the Emperor's Children as a Legion. I've touched on it many times, but it'd be good just to put all my little points into one single video like I'm going to do with this one. So, Dark Angels as a Legion. What do they get as Legion traits? Why is it not particularly overwhelming? And well, what can we do about it? So, first things first, as Dark Angels, if you're running with a sword weapon, then you get basically a half point of weapon skill. Now, we call it a half point because you don't just hit other units at a higher weapon skill. If you're fighting someone weapon skill 5 and your weapon skill 4, you're still going to hit them on 4s. But if you fight someone with the same weapon skill and you're using a sword, you hit them on 3s. So it's a half point of weapon skill. It's useful in a like versus like scenario, but that's about it. Because unless you're fighting a Marine with the same stats as the guy using the weapon, you're generally going to be hitting on 4s anyway. If you're fighting something weaker than a Marine like Militia, it's 3s anyway. So the sword really has no effect in that regard. The other special rule that Dark Angels have, worth making note of, is that if you don't finish the game with more full units, well, the units themselves don't have to be full, I suppose. The wording is just units on the board. Then the enemy does, or the opposing player. You lose D3 victory points. That's fucking rough. You could have played a perfect game, you've captured all the necessary objectives, you're up by a point or two, then you roll the D3, and all of a sudden the other guy wins. Yeah, that's pretty rough, because realistically, it's not about surviving units on the board, it's about achieving your objectives. The infantry that die are just a means of achieving that result, which is why I don't like kill point style missions. It's a bit silly. And even if there are kill points, I've always preferred actually going off the unit's value. Like if I kill a 1,000-point Drago Wing unit in 5th edition, for example, with my Chaos Demons, I don't expect it to be worth 1 kill point compared to the 5 or 6 I've given them for killing the unit, even though my stuff was worth only 2/3 of the points. Same concept here. So, yeah, it's pretty rough, and if you're fighting something like Militia, Demons of the Ruin Storm, even other legions, like something like World Eaters, they're going to bring so many units to the board, bulked out infantry squads, that sort of thing, that, yeah, quite often they are going to finish the game with more units than you, so you're pretty much guaranteed to always give away victory points. So that rule, it just needs to go. It's crap, I don't like it on the Alpha Legion either, but it's especially bad here, so piss that rule off. Alright, the Legion bonus, the swords. I would change it simply to, if they're armed with a close combat weapon, they get the plus a half point. Because at the end of the day, why is it just swords? If they want to argue that, well, knights use swords, yes, knights did use swords as a status symbol and a sidearm. Most of the time when knights wanted to kill people, or for a start, lancers, they would charge into combat on horseback throughout the Middle Ages, using lances, and earlier than that, spears. If you want to talk about weapons of war that rulers and noblemen are often depicted with, it would be axes and maces, more than anything. I think even Robert the Bruce is depicted with an axe in Scotland. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule, like William Wallace and his big claymore sword, that sort of thing, but overall, yeah, it's a weird distinction. So that would be the flat Legion trait. Just basically, if you are using a close combat weapon, you will hit opposing models that have the same weapon skill as you on a 3. That's all the rule needs to be. Now, special Wargear wise, they have Caliban swords, or Calibanite swords, which basically a +1 strength sword. Not terrible, not particularly great, but if you're using swords, I suppose it's an auto include because it's free. However, The next weapon they have is the Tyrannic Greatsword. What does it do? Gives you a couple of points of strength. It's only AP3, but if you do manage to get it through someone's save, it's instant death. I like that, and I don't think it needs changing. If we look at the sort of units that have been previewed already out of Games Workshop and Forge World, we can see that we have a sort of Terminator Praetor, a foot armored Praetor, and we're not sure what kind of shield he has yet, because Forge World don't know what kind of shield he has. They say they're playtesting it, but having seen the last decade of rules they've written, I have no faith in their playtesting, because frankly it's garbage, and I don't know what to say, guys. It's garbage. Let's leave it at that. I would like to see it be a Storm Shield, but not like the Imperial Fist, where it's just a flat, here's 3+ invulnerable save, and I would not like to see it be a Storm Shield that works like the Crimson Paladin's -1 strength of enemy weapon shields. I just want it to be more like the Dragon Scale Storm Shields of the Salamanders. +1 to your invulnerable save. That's it. Nothing especially strong about it, just +1 to invulnerable save. It would mean that your minor characters, who would normally only have a 5+ invulnerable, such as champions, will be a bit more viable for having the weapon. Or I should say, shield, in this case. Also, it would be pretty fluffy if it had one little thing that made it really stand out. And I think that little thing should be that it counts as a combat shield at the same time. So you can still use weapons that require 2 hands. Now the caveat should be probably, I don't know, it gives you +1 attack bonus if it's used with a hand weapon, as opposed to just being able to take like a Tyrannic Greatsword or a some sort of 2-handed weapon. So I guess there's that. So maybe that's what the rule should be. +1 to invulnerable save, and gives you a bonus attack in close combat when paired with a one-handed weapon. There you go. Perfect rules. Alright. So we've got our Terminator characters, we've got our Power Armored characters. What other Wargear do I want to see here? Well, we have other weapons like the Plasma Repeater, which is a woeful weapon. A 12-inch ranged plasma gun, which drops to 6 inches if you move. It's 2 shots if you move, but it's 3 shots if you stand still, and it's twin-linked. It's too short a range. Now, there are 2 ways I look at fixing this weapon. One is how it's distributed. Currently, it's only models who can take a plasma gun that can take it. Or 2, let's give it to some other options. So, if you wanted to make it just better, give it +6 inches range. So it's not a flat-out better option than plasma guns. At 24 inches range, they'll still slightly outrange it. And they'll still slightly outrange it even at the rapid-fire stage. Okay, cool. I think it would be fluffy, though, and interesting to see it actually given to any squad that can take combi weapons. So this would mean things like Terminators and characters taking it. Because, well, we know Dark Angels is the Plasma chapter in 40k. I've got nothing wrong with them being the Plasma Legion in 30k. And, of course, it would mean that something like combi grenade launchers, which are normally sort of an auto-include, people would have to then sort of toss up, which do I like more? Speaking of grenade launchers, what do? Well, stasis grenade launchers, which Dark Angels can take, if you hit an enemy unit with them, then they're at -1 weapon skill and -1 initiative in the ensuing close combat. Now, the -1 weapon skill thing's a bit of a laugh, because considering the fact that you have the plus half a point of weapon skill anyway as part of your Legion traits, it sort of is just negated. Only time it comes in handy is when you're fighting someone with a better weapon skill. But the -1 initiative is pretty good, so don't change that. Alright, what about the Molecular Acid Heavy Bolter rounds? So, this one is this is just a great one. Currently what they are is, you replace the ammunition in your Heavy Bolter with a ammunition which has the same amount of shots, same range. It has an AP value that you roll up, which means half the time it's going to be a 3 or less, which means you ignore marine armor, and the other half of the time it's going to ignore solar auxiliary armor. 1/3 of the time it's going to ignore Terminator armor or better. And it's poison 2+. So, a couple of change options that we can go with here. There is, we could reduce the range, drop it to something like half range, 18 inches. Still pretty far. You're going to admit it's going to be on jet bikes most of the time, or on dreadnoughts, so it's not really a worry to them that it's got a slightly reduced range, is it now? That's probably my least favourite fix. My favourite fix is gets hot. I think it should have the gets hot rule, because it's not representing the weapon itself getting hot, but more like this unstable ammunition breaking apart inside the weapon and melting out of it and killing the user, something like that. That would be very fluffy. So that's my favourite solution to the ammunition. You could also do things like remove the poison 2+, change it to poison 4+, but it's still very good ammunition, even at poison 4+. It's still an auto-include, but at least if you went to gets hot, I think it would mean that people have to pick their shots more wisely, and there is a risk of them actually losing models. They won't just spam units full of the stuff anymore, which is what Dark Angels players do. And as was pointed out to me in a previous video when I was talking about the Dark Angels and how broken this ammunition is, someone said, oh, that's it, take away the one good thing they have. It's like, well, no, I don't want to just take away the good things they have. I want to give you a bunch of different options of how we can make the weapon still viable, but not just a broken outright auto-include, which is not a thing I like with any model in any army. There should never be an auto-include. Yeah, just take one of these. Like the Sicker and Arcus is a great example of a tank that should be like 50 points more. At the moment, you're like, fuck yeah. Hell yeah, I'm taking that thing. So yeah, definitely something that needs to be done. That pretty much sums up the main Wargear. Are there other things I'd like to see? Yes, I would like to see something like a halberd or a polearm introduced. So we know legions like the Emperor's Children have Phoenix Spears, Space Wolves have their Frost weapons. An interesting range of night-themed weapons for the Dark Angels would be great. Not just swords. Something like one-handed Thunderhammers, like a Power Maul and Thunderhammer, somewhere between the two in strength. Like an AP3 Strength 6 Maul could be fun. Or maybe a Thunderhammer with Deflagrate. Something like that. Pretty cool stuff. Don't know exactly what rules I'd like for that, but it would be great to see them explore something beyond just swords, especially when they reference multiple different characters in the Dark Angels being armed with multiple different weapons in the stories. So, units-wise, well, we've already had a Leviathan and a Contemptor previewed. I do quite like both the models. It's the first point I want to raise. The only thing I don't like about the Contemptor is the sort of fallen angel icon on the chest. Probably a little bit too big and pronounced, but, you know, we're nitpicking here, guys. Otherwise, lovely model. I like the whole chains going on and that sort of early Heresy era overlapping armor plates. I like the shoulder pad and the hip joints. Yeah, that stuff's cool. The Leviathan itself, it's a bit of a shame that that's clearly just a stock Leviathan loadout, even if the model itself is very intricate. With the kite shields, it would have been cool to see them do something with more prescribed tech. Like, you know, plasma repeaters are a sort of weapon that maybe should be on a unit like this. Changing out the Phosphex launcher for a plasma repeater array could be cool. So instead it gets 2 plasma repeaters instead of the Phosphex launcher. So we can run around doing those Strength 6 AP2 plasma shots, twin-linked. That would be fun. That would be fluffy, thematic, a cool thing you could do with the model. And I don't think would be super overpowered, especially when you compare it to, say, Blood Angels Leviathans rocking assault cannons out of every orifice. That would be nice. Alright, well, we have, obviously, our Forge World basic upgrades. Of course, they don't sell the torsos anymore. They just happen to have pictures of models with torsos that are upgraded. Just as a, I don't know, bit of a fuck you. There's the Deathwing Knights in 40k. I would like to see them do a unit like this for 30k. Not necessarily all armed with maces, wearing robes, and armed with, I personally think they're ugly storm shields. I would like to see them do a melee style Terminator unit, because I think regular Legion Terminators stand well enough on their own as a shooting unit. I don't want to see Dark Angels go down that road. I would like to see them have a host of weapons, a range of weapons to pick from, like the Special Maul or Hammer that I mentioned earlier. Putting something like a Tyrannic Greatsword as an option for the unit Sergeant would be really fun, and it would be great to see a Terminator rock around with that. Of course, Plasma Repeaters, I think, are a weapon that, these are the perfect sort of unit to put it on. It's a close-ranged weapon, so, they'll really get the most out of it. It sort of speaks for itself. They don't need to have amazing stats. Weapon skill 5, I think's a given. They could have toughness 4, strength 4, 1 wound, just initiative 4. They don't need any particularly crazy stat. They don't need counterattack or furious charge or anything like that. That's sort of, we need to put special rules on special units to make them really stand out approach. It's not a great thing. It's really crept up badly in the Heresy in the last few years, to the point where I'm looking at the Blood Angels Legion especially and going, this is fucked. Like, Forge World just pulled something bad out with that Legion. Just weapon skill 5, a range of different weapons to pick from, make them an assault-themed Terminator unit. Great, done, dusted. Of course, these kits are out there, they're lovely, you could use any sort of parts from those. I really like the swords, like the sword that the Sergeant's leaning on, that kind of thing. I would try and stay away from the robes, except on perhaps unit Sergeants having cloaks. It's really about it. Alright, for the Ravenwing. Yeah, I think Ravenwing would make a good addition to the army. I don't think they should be anything particularly special. Perhaps just plasma repeaters on Outrider bikes. And make them a decent cost as well. The Outriders don't have them be the kind of points they are now, where a Javelin seems to be just as good. Or you could make the Ravenwing a Javelin unit, but in general, I want to stay away from too many wing-themed units. There is one particular unit, though, that I've had my heart set on for a little while with the Dark Angels, and that is what I want to call Paladins, or Champions. And this would be a unit similar to the Palatine Blades of the Emperor's Children. We're talking an elite close combat unit, all armed with some sort of two-handed sword or axe or mace. A real traditional sort of melee unit in power armor. And maybe upgradable to artificer armor. I don't think jump packs is an option necessarily either. I think on foot would be perfectly viable for the unit, and yeah, they'd be fun. It's taking that whole man-at-arms, foot knight theme and running with it, instead of just going for the same old Terminators, bikes, jump troops approach that a lot of legions take. Let's stay away from recon troops as well. I don't want to see more recon marines. The only legion that I wanted to see recon troops for was the Raven Guard, maybe the Alpha Legion. And we've got them in a couple of others. So let's do that. If I had to pick a unit for some of the wings, it would be a Destroy unit, of course, because they're just fun. And I want to see them do something different with it. Not something like the Angel's Tears, where they just made the most broken Marine unit in all of the Heresy, which every day goes by, I hate that unit a little more. Don't just give them the option to all take assault cannons or something stupid like that. No, give them stasis grenades. Make them more like Deathsworn. Space Wolves Deathsworn. That's something fun you could do with them. Realistically, they're not going to make a tank for something like Iron Wing. They're just not going to. There's no money in Predator tanks in Heresy because they suck. No one wants them. They're not going to make a special Sigarin just for Dark Angels. It's too much effort. They've made a Leviathan. They've made a Contemptor. As far as Forge World's concerned, that's a lot of effort. Those are models that sell well. Everyone uses Leviathans. Forge World's going to make a shitload of money as far as they're concerned. You got to think cynically when it comes to this stuff. It is what it is. Firewing, I don't see Dark Angels getting their own flyer model. Perhaps flyer rules wouldn't surprise me. Something like a Xiphon fighter with a different Wargear loadout, for example, which is similar to what they did with the Raven Guard, where they gave them their own version of the Storm Eagle, the Darkwing, and it's fucking shit. Just fucking way too many points in most Wargear, yeah. I could see them do something similar to that, but yeah, I wouldn't hold out hope. But that's my solutions anyway to the Dark Angels to fix them. So, to cover off on it again, always fighting with half a point extra of weapon skill in close combat, so always hitting opponents with equal weapon skill on a 3+ in close combat. That's their Legion trait. It's just generic, goes to all parts of the Dark Angels. Next, Plasma Repeaters, either being an extended range weapon going up to 18 inches, or being available to models that can take combi weapons, which could be something like Seekers again. They'll be strong with the weapon, but only strong at point blank range. So you've got to toss up what's effective way of using it. More weapon options than just the Tyrannic Greatsword and Calibanite Blade. We need to see axes, maces, that sort of thing. Preferably, I'd like to see an AP3 Power Maul, or a Thunderhammer with Deflagrate. Also, heavy bolters with acid rounds need to be nerfed. The nerf should be either reduce the range by half, so it's not just an auto-include where you can sit back in your own deployment zone shooting rounds at 36 inches with Devastator squads loaded with them, or my preferred fix is giving them gets hot, so people don't just spam these shots all game with impunity. Instead, they'll take the occasional gets hot hit on their units. Twin-linked heavy bolters are not super common, so it would be good to see it on those. And in which case, I would also open it up to things like quad rapiers to be able to take them. Stasis grenades are fine. Specialist units-wise, I think it would be great to see a type of Deathwing Knights unit, which is a melee-themed Terminator unit, and basically the same stats as Legion Terminators, just with an increased weapon skill, and probably an increased leadership. Just a flat 10 for the whole unit, perhaps stubborn as well, but no other crazy special rules, because frankly it's not needed in the Heresy, and there's enough of that bloat already. And there's enough super special Snowflake Wargear for single units. Again, the Blood Angels really exemplify that, because every single unit has 2 or 3 special weapons unique to that unit, and it's Blood Angels could have its own video as well. Also Ravenwing, again, something like Outriders with plasma repeaters on their bikes, nothing super crazy Wargear-wise. Lastly, out of the units I'd like to see is some sort of power-armoured combat unit wielding like two-handed weapons, poleaxes, that kind of thing, that really harks to that Knight Man-at-Arms Foot Squire theme, because it's just hot as fuck, I think. When it comes to their Dreadnoughts, I think a Plasma Repeater Array, which is a weapon I just made up, but basically 2 Plasma Repeaters or something, to replace the Phosphex Discharger on a Leviathan, could be really fun and fluffy. Also possibly some sort of Plasma Cannon upgrade, preferably one that doesn't have a shit rule like Soul Blaze on their Contemptors, could be fun as well. For the Storm Shield that's shown on the unique Praetor, not that it is a Storm Shield, because apparently Forge World's playtesting it, again, don't believe it. That weapon way it should work is just +1 to your invulnerable save, whatever it may be, or a 5+ if you have none. And when you're using it in conjunction with another one-handed combat weapon, it gives you +1 attack. Nice and simple. A really cool, unique item of Wargear that would look great on Legion champions, and would really go to say, look, my champion, he really is a badass knight who's probably going to kick the snot out of your champion in close combat. Which is the way it should be, because this is the first Legion, the Dark Angels. And personally, I think they're probably the best Legion if I was going off a personal preference fluff thing, because let's ignore the Thousand Suns and their psychic shenanigans. The Dark Angels are the closest in template to the Emperor. The least deviated. They're not dialed up to his level, of course. They're quite toned down. But the Lion is an absolute beast. And let's play to the fact that they're just all-rounders. And that's why I say slight melee buffs, some cool melee Wargear, units and Legion traits like, say, the Ultramarines have, for example, would work really well for the Dark Angels, but they've been done, so I want to avoid them completely. I would like to trust the fact that Forge World reckons they're doing multiple wings as a way of really buffing the unique combat styles of the Dark Angels, as opposed to giving them crazy Legion buffs to start with, which is why I said all they should get is just that half weapon skill bonus. I don't think that the D3 victory points gained or lost, sorry, I should say, not gained, for having less units alive on the end of the board should be a rule. That's just a shit rule, and I hate rules like that because they punish you for playing to the mission's objectives, whatever they may be. Because at the same time as you're trying to play to one set of objectives, you've got this other side one which can just fuck you in the ass out of nowhere, even though you did everything right. That's not fun gameplay. Anyway, Mac with the Outer Circle. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback on the Dark Angels, what I think should be done with them, and I'll see you all next time.